The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Don't be scared now, but it looks like you just wandered straight into UMIND country. That's UMIND, short for Unaffiliated Mind Games, and you ain't never gonna be the same again. Brace yourself. It's time for a red-hot truth injection. Oh yeah! That's right, bitch. We're rounding up the sheeple and shaking them awake. You mind? Too damn bad. We're gonna set fire to the wool over your eyes. Feel the burn, baby. Hot damn. We're toppling the lies of the lamestream media one by one. Woo-wee! Watch them bad boys fall. Hey, Universe A. This is Universe B calling, and we're gonna tear you a new one. You mind?
Okay, hey everybody. I am here with Jerome Wetzel of It's All Been Done, a multi-platform creative network that's based out of Ohio. And until recently, he wrote and performed for It's All Been Done Radio Hour, which had live music, actors, and totally real commercials that you can definitely buy things from. So, yes. Now, I was very sorry to hear about this. Now, you guys explain to me a little bit about what happened.
Sure. Basically, the theater we perform at closed for a few months because of worries of the coronavirus and the rules that Ohio has set, where we're not supposed to meet with more than 50 people and everything. So kind of cuts out performances.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really a shame. So you guys were performing at the Mad Lab Theater in Columbus on a monthly basis?
Yeah, the second Saturday of every month.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, that was actually, we do Creeping Wave, an audio drama, and we were looking to start up live shows, and obviously we had to put the kibosh on that. But, yeah, and I think that from your experience, when you do a live show, the energy is just different. Like, you get an immediate reaction, the energy between actors. What's the difference that you feel between just doing a podcast where you're editing everything together and doing a live show?
Yeah, I mean, we from the beginning have always been a live show. We've never done our podcast without the audience.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so while we, I guess, could get the cast together until more rules come down, because right now we're not supposed to gather even more than 10, and our cast is larger than that.
Yeah.
It would not be the same as anything we've ever done. And, you know, with our space being off limits, we'd be in an unfamiliar place, like trying to squeeze everybody in the living room and get 20 people around a few mics is difficult at best.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, we talked about trying to continue it, and we may try to do a few online episodes, but I feel like it's just not going to be all that great for our format. And, you know, we'll have to definitely do smaller cast things. We can't involve everybody if we're going to try to do something like that.
Yeah, it would be really a tricky thing. And you guys have just such an interesting, you do a lot of different things. I'm really, are you a Futurama fan by any chance?
I am, yes.
Okay. I was feeling a little bit of the Zap Brannigan energy in the character Captain Richard Kincaid. So,
yeah, it's certainly something the actor has brought to that. I know he was partially inspired by Zap Brannigan. I was more thinking the William Shatner Captain Kirk vein, but slightly more cartoonish, which is, of course, Zap Brannigan. So, yeah, it's definitely in the DNA, but I think Captain Cockay has undergone a lot more emotional growth as the series has gone on than Zap Brannigan every day.
Yeah, that's true. So for our listeners, explain a little bit about your plot lines, some of the things you do. I know that you kind of do different things, but sort of the main podcasts kind of give us an idea of what they can expect if they tune into your archives.
Sure. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Basically, we have about 10 different series that are ongoing. And every month when we do the live show, we perform 4 episodes. So we only get to do, part of our series every time. The series you referenced, Universe Journey, which as Captain Kake, now Commander Kake, he was demoted. That's a sci-fi adventure type series. Started them with a crew on a starship, very Star Trek-y, but with a comedy bend. And a few years in, we had a big event where we blew up the starship and scattered the crew. And now it's been a couple years later, and we're slowly trying to get the characters back together, and they've all gone down their different paths and experienced different things. So that is the series we do every month. That is our flagship. That's the one with the best developed characters and plots. But we also have a superhero series, the Top Notch Tangler. She speaks with a lot of alliteration. We have Daniel Kravitz's Chosen One, where it's a grumpy antique store owner who has to save the world from monsters and demons. And as you may gather, that was inspired by Buffy, but Daniel Kravitz is very different than Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
We're in our third season of that series. We've got Morning Show, which is a more grounded, radio program within a program, where they're doing news, but just to kind of take it out of the real world and make it a little more allegorical, so we weren't getting into current event political situations.
Right.
We have set a zombie disaster on the other side of the country from them. So they're not having zombies come into their lives, but influences the types of stories they're telling in the political climate they're in. And that's just a few of them. I mean, we have Packard and Ratcliffe, who are our eccentric immortal time-traveling couple that jump between dimensions and time and space, and there's a bunch more. And then we do the commercials that are, as you referenced, totally real.
Yes.
Obviously not. But they're little mini stories, and some of them are just standalone comedy bits, and some of them have ongoing characters that have appeared 10, 12, 15 times to develop them further. So a lot going on in that one show that we then split up and podcast out weekly for the last 5 years.
Yeah. And which I think is just so amazing. And now, how did you guys come together as a theater troupe?
So I kind of backed into that accidentally. I like to write. I'm a writer, a television reviewer, and I've written a couple novels, and I was just thinking of what's a project I could do. I was a little discouraged because when you do a self-published novel on Amazon, it's not like you're going to get a lot of downloads, even if you're telling your friends and family. And so I was trying to think of what I could do to write that would get in front of more people and involve more people and be a more collaborative effort where I could be contributing to something other than just sitting in a room by myself and writing. So when I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts. Are you familiar with Thrilling Adventure Hour?
Yeah.
So I was binging Thrilling Adventure Hour and loving it, and they were coming to an end, completing their run after 10 years. And my thinking was, as I looked around for a replacement podcast to listen to, since I was about out of episodes, there was nobody else doing what they were doing. And while I would never even attempt to copy their style and the way they did things, I figured I'll steal their format and do that live show that we split into podcasts and have the ongoing serials. And as we've changed and grown over the years, I think our show has ended up very, very different from Thrilling Adventure Hour. But it's that same basic concept of having the ongoing serials with the live audience as an essential part of the program. And so when I went to cast that, a few people in the show are people I knew, but I basically just posted audition information anywhere I could think of and got a ton of people that wanted to be in it. And here we are 5 years later. We still have most of the original cast. We've added a few more along the way, and it's been really. We've had over 80 guest stars. It's been really thrilling.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just it's so exciting to see people just organizing like creative projects like this, and because we really need it. We really just need like somebody in there inspiring us with just kind of a creative force and getting out there, and it really builds a sense of community between the people when they're able to show up and watch these shows, and just the energy between the audience and the performers. And so now, is your cast, is it a paid cast?
No, they are not paid.
So they are all volunteer.
That makes it even more impressive to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. And so you guys have live music on your shows, and you must have rehearsals that go along with this.
We do, but not a lot. So we have two composers that work on the show. One mainly does the theme songs, and one does everything else. We do a lot of musicals and standalone songs. And for songs, we do tend to rehearse those at least a few months before they're performed, because that takes a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But most of our shows, we do one read through with the whole cast about a week and a half before the performance, and then the day of the show, we do a full run through in the theater there. And after both performances, both rehearsals, we give notes and we go over some things, but a lot of it is dependent on the actors taking that time themselves, because it really is 2 rehearsals and then a show.
Wow. So I guess that means there's a lot of room for error that becomes creative interpretation. So.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely try to instill in our cast the ability to take charge of their own characters. I mean, I'll write to the performances, and we don't put too much improv in, but during rehearsal, they're free to throw it in, and then we can tell them yes or no. And some improv bits end up being our biggest laugh lines, and there's one actor in particular that has added many different elements to his characters just by throwing lines in here and there, and then I have to write to them because they're now canon.
Oh, I definitely respect that. We've done a couple improv episodes, and for me, being the editor who has to come in later, it's always like a little bit like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But you guys don't really get to edit. It's there, it's out in the open, and the performance you get is what goes up online. So, or out to the audience.
We do edit the podcast. I wouldn't say we take things out generally, and we tend to only we record the final run through as well in the theater on show day. And so if something really goes wrong, maybe there's a fire engine outside the alarms, messing with us, we have that backup that we can pull some audio from there, which we do occasionally. But yeah, there's very few things that we'll actually edit out. We might edit out awkward pauses. Sometimes the actors will do some physical things that play really well for the live audience, but it's going to sound awkward on the podcast if we don't take that kind of thing out. If an actor's stuttering over their line and we ask them to just stop and start again in the performance, we're going to take that out of the podcast. So there is some editing involved before you get to the podcast.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. I have to ask you about a couple different things that you do on your podcast, how they got started, because they're just, one of the things that I think is so entertaining is Dirty Story Night. Were you a fanfic writer back in the day? Explain a little for our readers what Dirty Story Night entails.
Sure. It's a competitive erotic fan fiction.
Yes.
Which, using that descriptor, there actually is a podcast out there called Competitive Erotic Fanfiction, and we were inspired by them as well. We borrow from a lot of creative people, but we figured Dirty Story Night, honestly, we didn't start it to be a public project that we were putting out. It was our cast after parties for It's All Been Done Radio Hour. We were just hanging out and having drinks and having fun together. And I said, hey, have you guys heard this podcast? And then they all wanted to write their own dirty stories. So we figured if we're going to go to that trouble, why not record it? And Dirty Story Night was born from a bunch of after parties, usually with alcohol involved, of people telling naughty tales. And we did that for a while. And then as our show grew, we started doing more in-theater parties or in restaurant parties where we didn't have the opportunity and the space to record. So we actually haven't released on that feed in over a year. Even though it's still getting great downloads. But we did recently do a brand new night and record some new stories, and we're organizing a second one before we start releasing again to make sure we have, a good chunk of stories to release. So there are some more Dirty Story Night episodes coming.
Very cool. Yeah, there's so much that you guys offer with your show that I think people should definitely check it out. If you're a Star Trek fan, there's always the Star Trek rewatches, which is great. And one thing I have to ask you about after listening to Godman, which is in that, Gary Marshall. When I first saw the Star Trek Original 30, there's the character Gary Mitchell. And for the life of me, I swore his name was Gary Marshall. Gary Mitchell is a character who becomes like an omnipotent evil entity, that kind of thing. And was Captain Kirk's best friend. Was that taken from that at all, or is that just a coincidence?
It was completely original. No. most episodes of Universe Journey are their own thing, but especially in the early days, we did do a few that were basically parodies on original Star Trek episodes, and our pilot was one of them.
Yes.
God-Man was essentially Where No Man Has Gone Before, the original 1966 pilot that aired, with the Gary Marshall element thrown in, because I thought his name was similar enough and it was funny. And basically I pulled up Gary Marshall's IMDb page and put in as many references to titles that he was involved in. I think there's something like 92 references to Gary Marshall projects in that 20-minute episode. Yeah. So every line Gary Marshall speaks is a Gary Marshall reference.
It's a great episode. Well, the whole series is great, honestly. I'm very excited. I'm hoping that we Old Scratch and me, my boss, he just loves Michigan, and I hope I'm not offending you, because I know things between Michigan and Ohio are sensitive.
I'm not a sports fan, so that's fine.
Okay. There you go. But yeah, he just loves Michigan, so he loves to go out there every year, and he drags me along for business reasons. We were hoping that we could maybe make a stopover to Columbus during our travels, which I guess pretty close. It's Columbus is about 6 hours in from where Michigan is, I think, but or less. I'm not sure. But yeah, and we were hoping that we could catch one of your live shows, because I just I was a theater geek when I was a kid, and I kind of crave it. And when you get older, it's harder to just when you're a kid, you just sign up, you get in there, and you're dancing around and singing. And when you're older, it's much harder, much more competitive. There's a lot more nepotism and stuff like that that you have to compete with. So I always kind of crave those kind of environments where you can watch those kind of shows and those serials and things like that.
Yeah, and to what you're speaking of the nepotism in the groups, and certainly some local theater companies tend to cast the same actors a lot. I think something that we do, and what I always wanted to do from the beginning, was having those guest stars in every show, so that we can get more people in there. Like I said, we've had over 80 in less than 5 years, so we have a lot of people come in and play with us, and only a few of them are famous Hollywood types that we've pre-recorded and put on the podcast. We just had Janet Varney on last month. That was awesome. Yeah, that was a big deal for us. That's been our biggest get so far. But yeah, most of the guest stars are local Columbus actors, and there's such a range of talent. We could easily do another couple hundred guest stars with no problem, without repeating ourselves.
That's really cool. And I really love that. So it feels like you've definitely drawn inspiration from old time radio serials. What are some of your favorites?
To be honest, I really haven't listened to the old timey stuff much, which is, that's probably why I couldn't get that old timey feel. I mean, I didn't want to copy Thrilling Adventure Hour too much, but they really feel like an old time serial, the way the characters speak and everything. So our stories and characters are much more modern sensibility, because I don't have that experience. And I think a lot of our shows are influenced by the type of things that I watch. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a fan of The Walking Dead. I'm a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And while we definitely try to make our things different, a lot of those influences creep into what I'm writing and what our show is. I mean, Morning Show is just my attempt to do Sorkin, but I know I'll never ever live up to Sorkin. So
wow, it's excellent stuff though, and it's so much creativity. And as you mentioned before, you yourself are a writer, and you've written novels. So to have this outlet where you get to put your stories up and have them, you're just able to bring it to a wider audience. And do you prefer the format of like writing like a novel, or writing the like a script format? Which do you, or do you just love both of them?
I was gonna say, I would have told you before I started the show that I would have preferred the novel, but I really, really love writing this show. So I want to do both. In the last 5 years since we started this, the only novel I actually had time to write full-length novel is I did write a Universe Journey novel that's out as well, that goes with the show.
So Love's Lust.
Yeah, Love's Lust Lost.
Yeah.
Which is a backstory but also kind of covers the first few episodes of the podcast as well, with some different perspectives and new things. We didn't just take the script and copy them over to novel format. But yeah, I really want to write a second novel that goes with Radio Hour, and I think at this point, other than the one novel series that I set aside to start doing this, I don't really have a desire to go beyond these characters and series, because there's just so much more to tell with what we're working on, that if I have time to write novels now, it's probably going to be Radio Hour novels, because I have a 3-year-old daughter and a full-time job as well as this stuff, so I only have so much time to write.
Yeah. I felt so much kinship with that when I was looking over your written work, because what eventually became the UMIND, Creeping Wave Radio, and Mossbread Comics actually started out as a novel series that I put together that I was trying to query out and could not get anybody to take it, because they're like, we don't know how to market this, it's not genre specific enough. And I was like, yeah. Sorry about that.
I don't know why they have to pigeonhole everything. Those things that break the genres are some of the most interesting.
I think so, and I think that that's what the internet and independent press and stuff like that has been so great for, is that instead of like curtailing your work down to one audience, that you're able to like find the audience who wants your work, and then they tell everybody and spread the word and that kind of thing. And what has your experience been with building your audience in that way?
It's been, I'd say the growth's been pretty slow but pretty steady over the years. I mean, we're certainly doing a lot more downloads than when we started, but I wouldn't say that there have been any huge spikes in our jump in listenership. It's just been a kind of, we're going to keep making it and people will eventually find us. I mean, we're not at the point yet where we can have a Patreon to really sustain us or anything. Right. We have some plans to release some scripts and some audio recordings and things to try to generate income, so maybe we can pay the cast someday. But at the moment, we make enough money to keep to pay for our feeds and printer ink, and that's about as much as we're making right now. Yeah.
So how have you and the cast been coping? Because I mean, there's probably just like a whole bunch of creative energy surging. Are you guys talking about what you're going to do with the characters, or
Yeah, I mean, I'm always talking to the cast about what I want to do with the characters. In fact, a couple of years ago, we implemented story meetings a couple times a year that all the cast is invited to, and they can come and hear what I'm thinking and pitch their own ideas. And I try to have individual conversations with as many of the cast members as I can as well throughout the year to get their input. Because, obviously you're going to get many great ideas that you would have never thought of yourself if you're soliciting that feedback. And these people who have been playing the characters for years know them as well as you do, at least as well as you do.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's great to have them involved. A few of them have certainly suggested things we can do while we're on break. I know we're trying to put together an Instagram story performance that's just 2 cast members. I don't know much about that stuff, and I'm not a big social media person, and so I'm just kind of like, okay, we'll let you guys experiment and see what works. But it's been I don't know what all we'll do, and we probably won't do too much because it's hard to still keep writing those scripts for the future months. I mean, we're going to make up April and May and June, as much as we can. And I think we're going to do 2 June shows, but our regular June show was canceled because, and quite reasonably, the theater that hosts us had to cancel all their programming in April and May, so they took our June date for making up their own programming. So, but they have offered us some makeup dates so we can get in the theater and get some stuff done, which we appreciate. It's just a matter of getting everybody's schedule available and hoping they have a steady enough connection. You mentioned our Star Trek Rewatch podcast. We've kept that going since we've been isolated and had to move to online discussions and recordings. And I know a couple of us, our feeds were fine and everything was smooth, but then other people kept cutting out, and there's Skype delays sometimes, and I don't know, I'm uneasy about putting out a product that's too flawed, so we got to make sure it's going to be smooth before we can launch it.
The Skype delays are always tricky. I've been opening up to a lot more Skype interviews recently. We're trying to do live interviews because just the audio quality was better, and we originally did Skype. We did the very first season of Creeping Wave Radio, we did like group Skypes which was miserable to edit because inevitably people just like go on a conversation. So I'm like, okay, well, 3 hours in, I know that they're going to start doing their lines. So, or people like messing around with the lines and you're like, please don't do that. Please read the line. But it was crazy. So, but now we're kind of going back with the interviews, and yeah, Skype delays and stuff like that are troublesome, but it's worth it to get to connect with other people who have the same kind of creative energy and the same drives that you do. And I'm very excited to get to talk to you and to sort of explore your process. Now, I want to ask you, as a writer and someone who's a podcaster, what is your schedule like? Because that's always what I struggle with. Like how you run so many shows and you have such an all-encompassing kind of, how do you plan that out?
It's not easy.
No.
I mean, the last job I had, I was able to get some work done before I had my daughter too. I was able to get some work done in the morning, and I was able to get some work done in the evening if I already had leftovers ready for dinner. So it was a lot of before and after work and then picking up the slack on the weekends. Right now, I started a new job a couple months ago that makes weekday work almost impossible because it's longer hours and everything. So right now, it's mainly weekends. I'm putting in 16 hours on the weekends, working, and then I'll do a couple evenings a week. But, sometimes I'm just too exhausted to get that much done during the week. So...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Right now, I'd say this. I'm still figuring out what this new job, what the new schedule looks like.
That's cool, though. It's and are you what are your plans for when the floodgates open up again and everybody is just hungry for like social interaction and watching live productions? Are you afraid of like the rabid fans that will be attacking the stage, or?
That would be, I would love to have that problem. Please all come to the show.
Yeah.
We did do a show only a week ago in March here. And by then, almost all of the local theater had shut down. Mm-hmm. So we had some people show up that were just like, thank you. Thank God there's something still going on. And, within days after that performance, everything else shut down. So we were one of the last ones standing, which was cool. And to get to hear that feedback of, my life is theater and we need theater. What I worry about, honestly, with our June shows is so many things over the last couple of months are getting put off that it's all going to be packed into June and nobody's going to come to our thing because there's so many other things going on. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, like I said, I think we're going to do 2 of our monthly shows in June. And I think we also will probably return to the Columbus Arts Festival, assuming that happens. So we'll have 3 performances in June, which is a lot to get through. So I'm more just like, how can we prepare and be ready for that? Before that happens. Thankfully, with It's All Been Done Radio, or the podcast feed, we did 6 months of shows before we released anything on the podcast, and I did that on purpose so we'd have a backlog.
Right.
And we did so many extra performances the first few years to try to get ourselves out there that we're now a year ahead. Oh. And we're not going to get any more ahead because I want to keep things seasonal, so our Christmas stories happen at Christmas and everything. But the Radio Hour podcast is unaffected. It's going to continue completely unchanged. I'll just have to figure out what those podcast releases look like a year from now when we're trying to mismatch a bunch of things in together.
Oh. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. It's just so much fun to be able to talk to people who are bringing their writing to the public, making it something like real and living by bringing these other actors in, by bringing music in and stuff like that. Now, just in your regular life, how are you and your family holding up? I guess your daughter is probably out of school right now.
Well, yeah, because she's not quite 3 yet, she hasn't actually started school.
Okay, so you're...
And yeah, we have been splitting her childcare between 2 different sitters, and one of them has stopped watching her, but the other one picked up the extra days. So right now, we still have a babysitter, and we're hoping that holds out because my wife and I are both still working full-time, but at home. So if we've got to watch a 3-year-old and work full-time, that's going to get really dicey, and I don't know when I'll have time for radio hour stuff. Because, you got to take care of the kid and get your paying work done first. But, yeah, we're hoping our sitter holds out for a while.
It's a good thing that they make 3-year-olds so cute, or else.
I mean, she's awesome. She guest starred when she was a baby.
Aww.
Just babbling on the stage. And now she's a little bit older, and she loves that to say, oh, my daddy wrote that song or whatever, and she makes up her own songs, and she's asked if she can guest star again, which we're not going to do right now, but when she's a little bit older,
Yeah. Reading level maybe, or yeah.
Yeah, that's at this point. I think she's got to be able to read a script before we could put her back in the show.
So I guess she gets to listen firsthand while you're like sitting at the piano and just like, or however you do it, your process. What is your process for writing your songs?
So I tend to write the lyrics first without any melody, and then with the theme song composer, I will sing the lyrics to him on a recording, and then he'll go back and arrange and compose it, which is a lot more work than it might sound like initially, because I can't hold a tune or sing on key at all. So he gets really frustrated because he has perfect pitch, and he has to go through and deal with that and try to make a melody out of it. But he's known me since kindergarten, so he puts up with it.
Oh.
The other woman that does all our musicals, I don't give her any guidance on the melodies, other than maybe like, this is the tone or the genre, or maybe these 3 songs I'm pulling inspiration from, so listen to them. But rarely does she have a melody that is anything like I was thinking when I wrote the lyrics. And then we'll adjust the lyrics based on her melody. But yeah, I write the lyrics basically isolated first, and then pass it on and let the musician set it to music.
Oh, very nice. So we've only just experimented last season. Last season was our short season with bringing in people doing score. And it was a lot of fun, but it is very nerve-wracking because you're waiting to see, like, okay, is this going to work? Yeah, and that kind of, but all of them worked out really well, and we were very lucky in San Diego. There's a lot of very talented musicians who were really happy to come in and play with us. So, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of people who, and that's really what it is people who just want to play, just want to have fun, and enjoy that kind of an environment. So, but yeah, nice. So, any big plans for the future? Any storylines that you can tease us with?
Sure. I mean, our 5th anniversary show is coming up in July, and our superhero series, The Top Notch Tangler, has gotten the shaft every anniversary. It has only been in one anniversary show, and it wasn't that big a deal for them. And so we are devoting our whole 5th anniversary special to The Top Notch Tangler. All of her villains from the last 5 years are teaming up, and she's going to have to take them all on at once.
Oh, man.
And so it's going to be a big 80-minute show of, we're excited. We're going to bring back some of our superheroes that we've seen as well. She's got a few superhero friends. And just put them all together in one gigantic clash. Yeah, it should be fun. Universe Journey, we're in the middle of our Echo Dimension. That's kind of our Mirror Universe type storyline, where there's a wormhole that they can go back and forth, and they've been invaded once, but we know there's a big war coming, so it's just kind of preparing for war and getting our characters to where they are. And then Daniel Kravitz's Chosen One this year, we're wrapping up Volume 3, which has been most of the episodes are written month to month. We have some basic general big broad plot lines, but with Daniel Kravitz, because it's probably our most serial story, we really thought about Season 3 and mapped it out more completely than we had in previous story arcs. And we've teased a lot of different threats in Season 3 and introduced a lot of new characters. And we're now working on that finale and bringing everything together. And then we're also, the only full-length musical we did a Universe Journey musical that was 60 minutes with 8 songs. And we're working on our second big, long musical for 2021, which is going to be a Daniel Kravitz Chosen One musical. So we're getting ready for that as well.
All right. Very, very exciting. Now, if people want to check out your podcast, give it a listen, just sort of introduce themselves to the characters, where can they find you, and how can they connect with you on social media?
Sure. It's allbeendoneradiohour.com is our main website. It's got links to iTunes and any other podcast app you want. You can just search It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Pretty easy to find. We also are on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at IABD Presents. That's our network. And on Facebook, It's All Been Done Radio Hour and It's All Been Trekked Before have their own pages as well. So we have 3 Facebook pages, Twitter and Instagram. It's just the network itself. We also, I want to mention, have a wiki that we're building for Radio Hour because at this point there's so many characters and plot lines. And there's already like 270 pages on it, but it still needs built out a lot more. We're 2 episodes away from having everything Daniel Kravitz on that wiki. Every character, every episode, every interaction. Daniel Kravitz is the most built out part of the wiki. But on that wiki, you can still get links to every single episode and see the episode lists and find out information about all the series. And that's linked from our main website as well. It's allbeendoneradiohour.com.
Okay, excellent. And before you go, just because I know that you love Star Trek, and as do I, who is your favorite of all time Star Trek character, and what is your favorite series in the Star Trek universe, I guess?
So Deep Space Nine is my favorite series. It was the first one that got serial. That's the type of storytelling I like. I like the ongoing arcs. Mm-hmm. And I loved all the political stuff and the religious stuff, and that actions the characters took had consequences years later. And they had a reoccurring cast of like 40 on top of their main cast. So Deep Space Nine is the one I really got into. And because of that, I think Sisko's my favorite captain. He had a quality about him where he was willing to bend the morals a little bit more than the other captains. Yeah. My favorite episode is in the Pale Moonlight, where he is torn because he helped orchestrate an assassination of a high-level diplomat. And that's not something a Starfleet officer should do, but he realizes that action may end up saving trillions of lives, and he's trying to live with it. And that kind of storytelling is just amazing to me. So that Deep Space Nine's where it's at, although I will say the new stuff, Discovery and Picard, are excellent, and I can't wait to see what they do.
Very cool. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to see Picard yet, but I'm hoping to wait for it to come to a venue that I can download it and then just binge it like crazy. So
there is a novel, Star Trek Picard: The Last Best Hope, that sets up the series.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it. It's I've read a couple hundred Star Trek novels at this point, at least. It's one of the best Star Trek novels I've ever read, and really gets you into Picard's mindset and what he went through between the Next Generation and Picard and why he is where he is.
Very nice. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jerome. Is there anything else that you'd like us to include before I let you go and get back to your life?
I don't think so, but thank you so much. We really appreciate any chance we have to talk about our show and plug it and get it out there. And Absolutely. Anybody that's helping promote creative stuff, what you're doing is fantastic, and we appreciate you including us.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, Jerome, thank you for talking to us today. Take care and enjoy your day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, bye.
Special thanks to Jerome Wetzel of the It's All Been Done Radio Hour. You can go ahead and check them out on www.iabdpresents.com. And you know what? They keep it simple because on Twitter, they're at IABD Presents. And then on Facebook, they're at IABD Presents. And then on Instagram, at IABD Presents. So, hey, you know what? We gotta thank Savage C. WHALNAR, our legendary announcer, because we couldn't do it without him. And you know what else? We couldn't do it without our UMIND theme song, Demilitarized Zone, by Ethan MEIXSELL, a very talented musician who really just sets the tone for everything. And you know what you can do? If you love this show, you can go to patreon.com/lucidnap, but only if you're able to pay for your groceries and everything. Right now is kind of a rough time. And, for small one-time donations, if you can't quite swing the Patreon thing, buymeacoffee.com/lucidnap. You can also go to lostbreadcomic.com and go ahead and buy my comic books, my artwork, or commission a piece of your very own. It's what I do. I draw things for a living. I'm not good at anything else, so kind of stuck with doing that and podcasts. So, hey, you can go ahead and check out Creeping Wave if you like audio drama type podcasts. And Creeping Wave is our scripted audio drama. It's going to have a whole new season starting up in October, and I'm trying to get the scripts finished up and out to everybody while we're still in quarantine. But you know what? Thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me that the silliness that we put on the air is something that you actually want to participate in, and a special super thanks to the Grammarica Show. Nikki Benfield, and Neil, who are our Patreons, and we love them dearly because we'd be dead in the water without those guys. The UMIND is brought to you by Lucid Nap Productions in cooperation with a hairy old man. Thanks for listening. Hugs and kisses.
Hello, is anybody out there? Anybody. This is Jim Cobb. If you are hearing this, the worst has happened. I've recorded a podcast at the end of the world and will broadcast it on channel PEN every Friday. It's all about the apocalypse, books, movies, TV, how much food and water will you need your bunker, all that kind of stuff.
Excuse me, sir. You're gonna have to keep the noise down. You're in a library, and you're scaring the kids. The world hasn't ended yet.
Sorry, ma'am.
Shh. You're in the library at the end of the world with host Jim Cobb.
Fridays, exclusively on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.